Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the SH Figuarts Iron Man Mark VII and Hall of Armor set. This is from the first Avengers movie. This is my favorite Iron Man suit, and so I thought it would be finally a good time to take a look at it. So since you guys have asked, I have incorporated a rating system at the end of each review for the overall figure, and I've also mixed in a few ratings throughout for the aesthetics, the accessories, and the articulation, so make sure you stick around for all of that. And if you want to see more Iron Man reviews, or maybe just more Marvel reviews, or more SH Figuarts reviews, I have playlists for those things, so go ahead and check those out and have a good time. So anyway, let's go ahead and get this guy off the stand and take a closer look. And this guy stands just shy of 16 centimeters, which makes him just about 6¼ inches. And if you haven't noticed already, this is an incredibly accurate portrayal of this suit. The SH Figuarts Iron Man figures have always been pretty cool. Some of them better than others, and some of them really good in some ways, but none of them have really nailed the Iron Man suit in an accurate way. The Mark IV with the Robert Downey Jr. head, which is impressive, still has kind of a static looking feel, kind of a T-pose looking design. This looks almost exactly like it's supposed to, which is another reason I wanted to pick this guy up. The biggest downside for me on this guy, other than some articulation issues which we'll get to, but aesthetically speaking, the red is definitely a little bit too dark. It's too much of a burgundy rather than a brighter red. Now, he's not supposed to be quite as bright as this, which is the 10th anniversary Marvel Legends version of the same suit. This red's not quite right either, but just as comparison, we should be somewhere in between, I think, probably to be the most accurate. But this does also give you a chance to compare the two. Obviously, the Marvel Legends one is the best Marvel Legends Iron Man, or at least movie Iron Man figure we've gotten, and it's pretty darn good. And it's a lot bigger than this one, but it definitely lacks in sharpness and that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't really compare the two directly, but I know you guys like to see things next to each other, so there you go. So why don't you guys let me know in the comment section below what your personal preference is. Do you like the darker red that's on this figure, or would you like the more accurate, lighter red? I personally really like this dark red, but I'm a sucker for accuracy, so I think I would lean toward the more accurate colors. But let me know in the comment section below what you think. So as far as this guy goes, the sculpt is super clean. Everything's nice and crisp. There's no real soft areas. Everything's got a nice hard line, hard edge to it where it needs to have it. Very pleased with that. Nothing feels fragile or anything like that. Nothing looks like really gappy or anything. So that's good. Again, the paint could definitely be better, but what is there, I mean, the red is still really well done. It's nice and metallic. The gold and the silver look awesome. Very pleased with this guy aesthetically overall. I'm going to give this guy... I'm going to give him 98. We have a Hulks out of 100. It's a very aesthetically pleasing figure. I would venture as far as to say, short of like a Hot Toys figure, which sometimes still look a little bit off, this might be the best looking Iron Man figure in terms of accuracy out of all of them. Out of all of the action figures I've ever seen, and my brother owns or has owned basically all of the Iron Mans, I think this might be the best overall. So I'm going to leave it there. I gave it 98. I think I said 98 out of 100. That's a pretty good rating. Let's move on to the accessories, because we do have a bunch. Let's start with the hands. We'll start easy, we'll ease into it. We have the 2 fist hands that come on him in the package, 2 karate chop style hands, 2 relaxed pose hands, and then 2 repulsor blast hands. And they do have the interchangeable guards for the top, so you just swap those from one set of hands to the other. And we do have the weaponized guards for the top if you want to use those instead. Now here's a downside I'm going to talk about just briefly. We have the repulsor blast hands, which have no repulsors on them. Instead, we have a peg for the actual repulsor blast, which we'll get to in a minute, and that's fine. However, I think it is a gross oversight to not include repulsor blast posed hands without pegs for the blasts. I would like to not have to put the blasts on to make him look like he's ready to fight. You get what I'm saying? Just to have the same hand, but with the actual sculpted repulsor on there. I think that would be a very wanted thing by just about everybody. You can't use the relaxed hands because of the angle of the peg, so it feels like there's one iconic pose you can't really do with this guy, and that's a bummer. But if you do really want to get that pose done, you have some repulsor blasts. You have some relatively small ones to put on the hands, and if you really want to, you can use these bigger ones. So you have 2 different options for the hands. And then speaking of repulsor blasts, we have the 2 that go on the feet. So you do have some options there, some variety. We have some interchangeable parts for the armor. For the thighs, we have the pieces that open up and they're done very nicely. For the forearms, we have the ones that have the little missiles that pop out. Obviously the missiles aren't functional here, but those do interchange on the forearms. And then we have the wing flaps slash shoulder area interchangeable things with the little missile pods in there, and they all look glorious. I love them. We do not get a flight stand with this guy, which is definitely a disappointment, but we do get this armory piece, which I think is not worth the money. You don't really, as far as I know, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't really follow the SH Figuarts Iron Man figures or movie figures for a while, but I'm pretty sure you can't buy this suit without this armory piece. And I'm sure some people love the armory and it's a nice idea. However, it hikes the price up a lot and it's relatively unimpressive. It does have a battery compartment in the back, which has an all too long screw to use. And it takes 3 batteries, and then you really don't get the best lighting situation. I have it upside down. That's what I get for not paying attention to what I'm doing. But that doesn't really change anything. Let me go ahead and dim the lights and I'll show you how well it lights up. Now, this is a fairly dark room right now. I have some lights on so you can still see a little bit, but you would not really be showing anybody your collection or looking at it yourself in a room darker than this. So if I turned off all the lights, sure, the lights in this will look better, but you would almost never use it that way, so that's not practical. So here's the thing. This thing I'm estimating adds about a value of $40 to the price point, okay? So it's a pretty expensive accessory. You would want it to function pretty nicely. So let's put Iron Man in there. That's how you're gonna see it. Let me turn it on and let's see how it looks. Pretty unimpressive, if you ask me. The lights over here do hardly anything to shoot up the side. It's really just a light source right here. The one above his head is too far back in the unit to really do anything. You just get a bright spot on the top of his head. And the picture on the box makes it look like there's gonna be lights throughout the back of the device also. There are not. They don't shine through if they're back there. I mean, I think maybe they're back there, but they're not coming through. You can see, like, okay, right there, you can see just the tiniest hint of light peeking through. It's not enough. It's not a good enough accessory. Does it still look kind of cool? I mean, sure, but it's mostly because it's an Iron Man suit, not because the lighting system and the armory box is actually worthwhile. You can see it doesn't really change the effect other than lights are cool. And don't get me wrong, I love things that light up, but even if I turn off more of these lights, the effect is just, it's not good enough. I don't understand why they went through the hassle of doing this and then didn't make it light up. Like, it doesn't light up the suit. If I turn this off, it's just gonna disappear. No suit lights. That's a huge problem. So this figure, if you haven't noticed, is gonna probably get a pretty decent review because it looks really awesome, and how bad could it be articulation wise? We'll see. But this accessory on its own merits is a turd. It's a giant dog turd made of paper mache and sadness. I don't like this at all. It's such a misstep. Good implementation of, or bad implementation of a good idea is the best way of putting it. I will go on to tell you these pieces up here and down here can be removed, and you have interchangeable ones that you can peg in so they can snap together if you have more of these. But why would you want more of these? It's such a lousy design. They did such a bad job. I'm ranting a bit because it added $40 roughly to the price point, and it is no good at all. But that's it for the accessories. So with that one aside, I'm gonna give that one a separate rating. And for the rest of the accessories, I'm just gonna do a straight up 9 out of 10. Love these accessories. Only thing I really want is a flight stand, which is pretty standard for SH Figuarts to not include, and the repulsor hands. Otherwise, the accessories are great. Now for this guy, this rating is paper mache and dog crap. That's it. That's the rating. Moving on to the articulation, which is important because it's an action figure. This guy does suffer some in the articulation department. For the head, pop it off, you get a giant double ball peg, which is the best. There is no better functioning neck joint than a nice double ball peg. Is it executed perfectly here? Not perfectly, but well enough. Then the neck is also on a ball peg, which moves a lot. You can see the range in this neck is probably the best we've ever seen. I don't know, it's pretty good. I don't know if it's the best, but it's pretty good. So you peg the head on there, and so like I said, it's not implemented as well as it could be, but you can get him to look forward pretty well. Looking up, I mean, forward if he's flying, pretty well. He looks down just fine, side to side, leaning, works nicely, rotation's good. It's It's all around a really great neck situation. It's probably a little bit too long, but you can if you want. Now this is how it's supposed to be. The neck is maybe a little bit too long for accuracy's sake. If you slide the head forward on the neck, it doesn't look great from the side, but from the front, it looks a whole lot more screen accurate. So you have that option. So I'm very pleased with the neck. We'll go ahead and talk about these guys. We do have the removable feature, and that's fine, but they do have the hinge on there as well. So if you want to open up these flaps, you can do that. It's nice. It's fine. There you go. Flaps. For the shoulders, they rotate around with the arms, which is absolutely the best way to do a shoulder pad because it never impedes the articulation if handled properly. So you have a ball peg that connects the arm to the body, which functions nicely, and they do extend. You do have a slip joint in there for them to extend. Doesn't really add that much value in terms of posability, but it is there, so if you want that, that's awesome. It's good that it's there. Then we have our ball hinge, which is still independent from the shoulder pads. Of course, the sculpt of the pad itself is not going to allow it to sit flush in every single pose, but this is significantly more usable than one that's connected to the torso itself. So shoulders are just about as good as you're going to get. Your bicep swivel still works just fine. Double jointed elbow is really nice. I'll tell you what, from back when I was reviewing these SH Figuarts Iron Man figures regularly, this is a marked improvement. The elbows look so much better, really good range, very pleased with that. For the wrists, pop it off so I can just show you a little bit better. It's just your standard itty bitty ball peg. Not a whole lot of range. It's mostly just going to be a swivel. It depends on which hand you have on there and how it fits, but as you can see, there's not a whole lot of room there, so it's mostly just going to be a swivel. Now we get to the torso, which is about as good as the armory box that we got with it. So there's a whole bunch of different hinges and ball pegs, and I think most of you don't care specifically about what does what, but I'll show you how it functions. You can extend it down here. You can see the hinge right in the front, which is terribly ugly. That's not good. And then there's no sculpt work underneath there, so when you extend it, it just looks really bad. And then when you try to extend it up here, it's not really extending anything. It's got like a hinge combo with a ball peg in there, but when you extend it, it cants this middle piece off at a weird angle. So it's just really all around gross looking. And to talk about gaps, holy crap. There are gaps everywhere on the back here, especially. Really unappealing. This little piece lifts up down here a little bit to show a gap there, a big gap down here, and a big gap up here. Not a good situation. How does it work leaning back, you ask? Well, the same amount of gaps pretty much. It's almost impossible to pose this without it looking like it has giant holes in it, because it has giant holes in it. Not the most appealing situation. And it's not hyper functional either. Leaning it forward is fine, but look at that. Holy crap, it cuts it in half. So that's, I mean, I guess it is technically functional, but very ugly. And leaning it back is fairly functional and less ugly, but okay, so I take it back. It's functional, it's just really, really ugly. Side to side works okay. That's fine. But then the rotation at the top is very minimal. Very little bit of rotation up there. You have to rotate down here, which gets even more gappy. It's just not a good situation. His torso is grossly over-designed and under-executed. It's just not good. A couple of ball pegs would have been fine in there. I mean, look at this. This guy has one single, maybe double ball peg in here, and he leans forward and back pretty well, full rotation. It's about the same functionality other than the huge gaps from leaning him extra far forward and back. So anytime you can compare an SH figure to Marvel Legends and the Marvel Legends figure is even close, you have a problem. So it looks good when it's all collapsed and not really moved around too much, but it can get really ugly and is not very functional. So be aware the torso is pretty bad on this guy. For the hips, they're fairly standard. We have our hinged ball pegs, which drop down really far for you to bring the legs pretty much horizontal, so that's all right. You do get really gappy though, so you're gonna have to be careful with your posability because there's a huge gap in his hip, but that's pretty much standard, and there's not a whole lot they can do about that. This one is better than most. It does go back a little bit. Going out to the sides, pretty good, no problem there. When it's seated all the way up, it's almost seamless, so that's awesome. That's a big bonus. You do get a thigh swivel, which is actually a ball peg, so you get some extra posability out of that. It's pretty nice. For the knees, it's a huge improvement over the older figures that had that really skinny internal knee joint. This one's nice and bulky and it doesn't really kill the sculpt at all. It looks good and it functions really well, so very pleased with that. And then we come down to the ankles, which are about as good as the torso, maybe even worse. We have this little flap back here, which is nice enough for us to bring the foot back. That's fine, but like most figures these days, we can't bring the foot forward. at all. It's awful. You can't move it forward, which is a huge problem for posability. You do have a toe joint, but it's almost worthless too. I mean, you get only a little bit. It's probably practical, but I don't buy these for practicality. I buy them for being able to pose them, so that's a big problem. And also, the ankle rocker gives you maybe 5 degrees. So very limited ankles, very limited torso. Everything else is gorgeous. So for the articulation, I'm gonna give this guy only a 7 out of 10. It's not a very good setup in some places. In other places, it's fantastic. So the offset is 7 out of 10. Otherwise, I mean, this figure, obviously you have all the information you need now to decide for yourself. He's got a lot of accessories. He's got decent enough articulation overall. The aesthetic is by far the best quality of this guy. So I'm gonna give the overall final verdict of this guy, I think 18 shawarmas out of 20. I think that's what it is. 18 shawarmas out of 20. Very, very nice. I just can't stop. I love looking at this figure. It has the right look at every angle, and you almost never get that. So I'm very pleased with it, and I think you will be too. And I'll stop rambling. This has been a really long video. Thanks for watching, guys. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and if you didn't like it, well, you can give it a dislike if you really, really want to. But please don't. It hurts my feeling. All right, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I do have new videos up almost every single day. We talk about action figures, movies, TV shows, video games, and all kinds of other fun stuff. So come back for that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.